Hey everyone, welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. Valero Texas Open live chat. So start filling up your questions right now. Reid Fowler will be joining me momentarily. I do want to recommend to everyone, especially if you're listening to this live, give it a like. If you're listening to it on demand, just check the time codes to see when we actually start doing this. I'm going to hit on the weather to begin with, some updates on everything. And I still haven't released my betting cheat sheet yet because I'm still waiting on the weather to talk this through a little bit. As it stands right now, I'm not seeing a distinctive advantage to any wave. It's just kind of crappy for every wave so far. So Reid and I will get more into that strategy as the show starts, but I do want to remind everyone of the two shows from Monday and Tuesday. Go check those out and give those a like too. Download the podcast wherever you can download podcasts, which means iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Audio Boom, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Pat Mayo Experience, all available up there. So subscribe, rate, it goes a long way into help keeping this show free. Plus, if you're not a member of FantasyNational.com yet, what are you doing? Over 1.02 million won, at least, by members the last 2 weeks. Some of that was me. Most of it was not. But it's we're adding new tools every single week, so it makes doing your research for golf much, much easier. So start loading up your questions. Like I said, I'm going to start with the weather with Reid, and we'll get into that right away. So let's get to it.
Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Mayo Experience, Valero, not Valspar, like I was saying this morning on Twitter. Valero Texas Open. I do not know the results of this tournament, so it's going to be a bit trickier to figure out. It's actually going to be incredibly tough, and like I mentioned in that preamble, Reid Fowler from DK Live will be joining me, but I do want to talk about the weather for just a second, and well, I don't check my Facebook main page inbox. I had someone pass it along to me, and I got a note from a viewer, John Piper, and he says this: a front is coming through San Antonio on Saturday. It's going to get nasty here. The wind will be howling from the south the first couple of days and howling from the north on Sunday. I've lived here for 35 years and it's never been this windy. There's a good chance of hail and lots of lightning. Wouldn't be surprised if there are multiple weather delays. That's on Saturday. Ball striker's paradise this week due to the course and the weather. Go Jimmy Walker! Showing nice shine signs lately, and he knows the course better than anyone. I like that with multiple wind directions. Even the great strikers will be chipping a lot this week. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you, John, and I want to thank my team for passing that along to me so I could see that. So I've already put into the YouTube chat the weather wind finder tower that I'm using for this week. And right now, there doesn't seem to be a distinct advantage, to tell you the truth. It just looks super windy, no matter when you go out. Like it's in knots on this site. So a knot, like if you have 10 knots, it's like 11.5 miles per hour. So just figure out that calculation if you'd like, or just Google what the actual calculation is to give you per second to the T miles per hour. But on Thursday morning, starting at 7 a.m., it's around 13 miles an hour, with gusts up to 29. So the gusts throughout the morning, well, the overall miles per hour are down. The gusts are much higher in the morning than they are in the evening. So it goes in 3-hour increments. At 7, around 13 miles per hour. At 10 a.m., it's around like 19 to 20 miles per hour with gusts around 25. God, I sound like one of those awful, like, baseball Twitter meteorologists. I think the whole point is, it looks like the PM-AM wave may have a mini advantage. Now, I'm not going to go out of my way to stack teams that way. I'm planning on building around 20 lineups this week. I plan on putting about 5 with the PM-AM stack. I'll do 2 with the AM-PM just in case I'm wrong, but I'm not going to let it affect me too much. I will say for the showdown contests, I think even though if you don't have a good grasp on what the right wave is going to be, I think for those single-day contests, stacking a wave and hoping that you fluke your way into the good wave would be the way to play those contests if you're making multiple lineups. So that's my spiel on the weather. Conclusion, I don't really have an answer for anyone, so just put yourself in a good spot to get lucky. Sometimes that works out. Reid Fowler, what's going on, my man?
Nothing much. Just gotta say congratulations. But yeah, I mean, the two things that we see always at the Valero is wind, right? And then Kevin Na in the 16. So those are two things that we think about. You've talked about it with some of your other guests previously, but yeah, the wind is going to play a factor here. So, and that's why a lot of the Australian golfers, there's a connection here because obviously in the same sense, there's a lot of wind down there when the guys play in Perth and some other places in Australia. So we see that connection. But yeah, if you're going to stack those AM PMs or those PM AMs, the PM AM stack is looking nice, but there's also contrarian play. So I like those lineups.
Yeah, listen, I don't even want to say that I think that there's a huge advantage to the PM AM because, again, this is weather. The wind could just, the gusts could hold off for 2 hours, then all of a sudden that AM wave is looking fantastic. So, again, I'm not going out of my way to stack. I will do a few stacks because, as you mentioned, this is a tournament we know that has a lot of wind, and if you can find yourself in the fortunate position to have 6 guys on the right side, whatever the right side is, then you're going to have an advantage. So if you're playing multiple lineups, I think it's to burn one on each side. Hell, you could burn it on the wrong side of the stack and still get 6 of 6 through. And that could be a fine team. So don't worry too much about that. If I was building like 3 lineups, I'd say screw it and just build with the guys that I like best. Because frankly, that's usually the best way to go. And you mentioned the big name, Kevin Na, because people think about that 16 when he was in the woods. Then you can watch that YouTube video where he went back the next year and took the chainsaw to where he was in there. And the first question from Eric in the chat actually comes for Kevin Na. Everyone's scared about Kevin Na after missing the Masters cut, and when he killed everyone last week, sunk a lot of really good 6 of 6 lineups. Do you think he is a good GPP or cash play this week? I'm not using Kevin Na. Maybe I'm scared too much and the recency bias is playing too much into it, but I really think that the reason that I'm veering away from Kevin Na and what actually would make him a nice pivot and contrarian play is that I really like a lot of guys in his range. So when we get down to the Kevin Na level, he's at $7,800. The two guys on both sides of him and the guy below him, so Keegan Bradley, JB Holmes, and Jamie Lovemark, I just much prefer to Kevin Na this week. The around the green game will save him, and he's one of the best around the green players on tour. I just worry that if it's going to be super windy, he has demons at this course, and some decent results as well, but he doesn't have the length to overcome and make this course easy in the spots where it needs to be easy. So that would veer me away from Kevin Na. What do you think?
Yeah, same here. I even like Kevin Streelman a little bit better than Kevin Na. But when you talk about Kevin Na, he's great at scrambling. And, you have to take that with a grain of salt is he has to get into a spot where he has to scramble. So therefore, is that, a good statistic to look in on. But yeah, he has popped in some places. I'm going to be off on him. There's guys, like you said, Lovemark, Keegan Bradley. Streelman is another guy that pops for me in that range. So I'm going to be off on Kevin Na as well.
So even when we contextualize it a little bit in terms of around the green game, yeah, you don't want to have your guys relying on around the green work, but this is an event because of the wind with some of the fewest hit greens in regulation. The green size is actually quite average. It's like 6,400 square feet. They're not tiny greens by any means. They're average greens. It's just you get pushed off on either side, and then you're forced to rely on your chipping. So for me, when I built my model, I didn't factor in around the green, but one of the great things about Fantasy National, besides the fact that you can save different models now and refer to them, is I actually threw around the green on there with a weighting of 0%. So I didn't want it to affect my model, but I did want to see as almost a tie break on the very end column, like, oh, if I'm between this guy and this guy, well, are they really that good around the green? It's like, oh yeah, this guy is a disaster around the green. This guy's really good. If that's going to be the difference between two similar players, that's the way I'm going to side. So right now I'm looking at the last 50 rounds overall, and if you look at Kevin Na, he's fourth. He's fourth in this field in terms of strokes gained around the green, but the guys around him are no schlubs. Like Jamie Lovemark's 15th, JB Holmes is 36th, and Keegan Bradley is 55th. He's probably the worst, and even if you go up a little bit, like Martin Laird is third in that stat, you drop down a little bit, Bill Haas is first in that stat. So I would think I would prefer those guys a little bit more. So that's my whole take on why I don't want to play Kevin Na. Now he's going to be absolutely fantastic. Brian asked, not including the fade, how much Sergio is too little Sergio? What's your recommended exposure? It's really difficult to create really good lineups with Sergio this week, to be perfectly honest with you. The pricing is very tight. I do like a lot of guys in that lower $7,000 area, but you get into the $6,000 area. Everyone's playing Abraham Answer. I won't be, but he's going to be like super chalk from the $6,000 range that I don't really want to dip too far down into it. So it makes it hard to play Sergio, and I think that's actually going to affect his overall ownership. I can see him coming anywhere between like 12.5 to 17.5. I know that's a vast range, but we're talking about the best player and the most expensive player on the board. And if people try to max out salary cap, that's the way that they're going to go. So I think if you're only playing a few lineups, or if you're playing in a single entry or a cash game or a 3-max, just don't use any Sergio. I don't think that there's a need to leave yourself to a stars and scrubs roster. If you're playing 20 lineups and you want to use 4, you're overweight on Sergio, and I think that's the way to go. He does have the best win equity in this field. I personally, I'm still kind of torn on it. I don't think that I'm going to use any Sergio. Now, this is coming off a week where I said I'm not using any guys over 10K, and that worked out really well. But, you know,
Yeah.
I'm going to be using Luke List, and he's at 10K, so I'd much prefer to have more Luke List and the solid roster at the bottom end that affords you rather than going up $2,000 and using Sergio. Will you be using Sergio?
I'm not either. I'd say my top guys in that 10K and above range is going to be List and even Ryan Moore. Like you said, it gives you more flexibility with what you want to do with your roster in the bottom, because you're looking at guys in that low 7, like, you know, Martin Keimer, Willie McGirt, you know, some of these guys, Kevin Tway, that you might have to be playing here. I don't necessarily want to, if I'm making 20 lineups, you know, you have to start playing these guys and put a lot of trust in them. So I'm not going to be playing a lot of Sergio, if at all. Just because if you want to, right, like you said, you have to have a strong stance on a guy at that range or at that range, at that price, because he's the most expensive, and that has to ensure you a top 5. So for me, I can see where this question is coming from, because a lot of guys would be off in Sergio because of that, right, that 13 or whatever it was in the Masters, that par 5. He's not playing bad. He actually he's coming through with pretty elite stats when it comes to ball striking off the tee, but at that price, I just rather go down and have more flexibility with my lineups.
Remember to give the episode a like, always goes a long way. Or if you're listening to this on demand after the fact on the podcast version, rate and subscribe to the podcast. Come on, people, help me out here just a little bit. And the DK cheat sheet is up on DKPlaybook.com right now. There are 2 shows from earlier in the week, including Zach Turcotte making his Pat Mayo Experience debut, despite the fact that I chat with him almost every single week through Twitter. And Jeff Bergerson was busy this week, so Zach stepped in, did a terrific job on that to break down the entire field. Plus, Feinberg was on Monday, so those shows are still up there. My betting cheat sheet will come out a little bit later on. I did want to wait on the wind a little bit to finalize that. I still have all the plays that I gave out on the Monday show, and I was looking to add 1 or 2 more pieces, plus my first round leader, so I'll have that updated for you on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme, just a little bit later on. Also, if you want to ask me questions on Twitter, not just the YouTube chat, just tag me in it and I'll try to get to them. If you're doing it on Periscope, honestly, those questions disappear after like 3 seconds. Not the ideal platform, unless you're just looking at the screen like this in order to take questions. So just going to Twitter and doing it that way is probably a little bit easier. At the PME, and Reid, where can they follow you?
Yeah, at Reid T. Fowler. So just very simply put in my name and you'll find me on YouTube channel, Twitter, everything, all that good stuff on DK Live as well. All
right, Eric asks, for cash, is it okay to fade the entire top guys, List, Sergio, Hoffman, and grab 8K and 9K guys? Well, yes, you can do that. I don't think that you necessarily need to, but like if you wanted to play a cash game team, and the team was, even if you didn't use the 9, because I don't really trust any of the 9K guys. I like Adam Scott this week. I like Kevin Chappell. Wouldn't be using those guys in cash games by any means. And I'm not going to use Sneds or Horschel. So even if you went like Steele, Xander, Perez, Walker, Zach Johnson, Martin Laird, and that was your cash team, I wouldn't have a problem with that, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, and why would you fade? The question I would ask is, why would you fade the top if you're going for cash? You know, I'd rather get a little bit more, right? You want to have a stability, you want to have a balanced lineup. So guys like Hoffman, who's amazing at this course, this is his, right, RBC for Luke Donald, this is his course. He always plays well here. I would ask, why would you want to fade those top guys? If you want a balanced lineup, you could start with a Charlie Hoffman. And like you're right, those 9,000 guys, they're hard to trust. I'd rather play them in GPPs, but I wouldn't necessarily say you have to fade the top, because those guys are there for a reason, right? They're either course horses or they've been playing well. So you don't have to, in my opinion.
You don't have to, but I think the whole point of doing it is that even if you do use List or you use Hoffman or potentially use Kuchar, that last guy on your roster is no longer Jamie Lovemark or Zach Johnson or Martin Laird or Keegan Bradley. It's now Abraham Answer or Trey Mullenix, guys with a bit more risk attached to them. We have an Abraham Answer question here from Gold Miner James. Answer for betting? I wouldn't say that's the answer this week. He comes in at 80-1 here. I don't like those odds whatsoever. And the reason that he's becoming a very popular DraftKings play is because he's really underpriced compared to all the other guys around him. Like, just take a look at the odds. Like, he's at $6,900. Nate Lashley, who Zach actually got me on, I'm going to be using, that's the pivot for me off of Abraham Answer, and I'll be using some Lashley, but he's at 160-1. Jeff Ogilvy's at 7,000. He's 350-1. When you see Answer's price, it's I don't think that he should be 75 or 80 to 1. I think that he's more of a 150 player. But that reason alone, when you correlate the odds to go along with the DraftKings price, the value on DraftKings is just so much better for Answer. Unfortunately, he's going to end up being super chalky. And every single week, once you start getting these chalky guys who are not proven performers down in the lower 7K, upper 9K level, like it almost, no matter how good you think that they're going to be, it almost just makes sense to fade them in any large scale GPP.
Exactly. And for me, if you know, looking at that, and that's like a really good point, right? You look at the odds versus the DK pricing, and I mean, that's the biggest discrepancy. So I can see where that's coming from. But, you know, for a bet, I'm not too sure I would be on Answer. There's some guys that I like in terms of at a little bit lower, but what you're trying to find here is you're trying to find a flyer, right? You're trying to find a guy, a shot in the dark, so to speak, that has some win equity. You know, the Kodaira effect, right? He was top ranked last week, and that's why a lot of us were on him, especially you, in terms of playing him and putting him in your DK lineups. But at that price, in terms of betting odds, I'd be off on Answer, and I'm interested in some other guys on DK, a little bit lower than Answer.
Well, even to put it in some perspective, like who do you think is objectively a better player, Abraham, Answer, or Grayson Murray?
Grayson Murray.
And Grayson Murray's 90 to 1, Answer's 80 to 1. Like,
exactly.
It's tough. Listen, if you got a feeling about Answer, go with the feeling. Like, I'm not going to try to talk you off of it. I'm giving you the reasons why I am not super intrigued by it. Next question. T-Dace25 asks, can we get a John mention? Please, love the drop. Johnny question marks actually has a really good finish at this event before, and there's two ways to attack this course. The Bombers do have an advantage because the course is a bit longer if it plays windier and the wind's in your face, and you really do need that extra distance. But we have seen accuracy players who gain strokes off the tee because of their accuracy. Ryan Moore, Matt Kuchar, Johnny question marks is another one. I believe he was second here a few years ago. By a few, I mean like 5. But he has been playing a lot better. I'm not going to have him in my player pool. Might take a look at him for first round leader depending on the wave. I don't know where he's coming in the wave. Let me look that up. He is teeing off at 12:40 p.m. on the back nine. I mean, that's not terrible to tell you the truth. So he's actually in a group with Aaron Wise and Jamie Lovemark's right behind him. There we go. There's like half my team right there. But I probably won't be. I won't be using John in terms of DraftKings. Probably first round leader. Do you have any interest in Johnny?
No, I mean, I think when you start to look at his approach game, it's getting better. Off the tee does not stat out well over the last 24 for John. And there's guys in that price range, like Scott Piercy, for instance. Every week I'm on Scott Piercy, and he
how does that work out?
And then he plays good on Thursday, Friday. But when it comes to the weekend, goodbye Scott Piercy. So I like those guys a little bit better than Johnny question marks. And so I'm not going to be on him. I'm going to be more on Scott Piercy in that price range.
Well, I think that guys like John and Scott Piercy are actually perfect targets for the showdown game, to be perfectly honest. Like, rather than having them sink all your lineups on Sunday, use them in the Friday showdown contest, and maybe that's when they reel off their -8 round.
Exactly. I mean, even Sharma, right, at 75, I think that's a little bit better play than Johnny question marks. Again, you have to go up in pricing, so you have to change some of your lineups if you're looking for that 7,400 guy. But I'm going to be off on that price range.
Dane asks, what do you expect the cut line to be around due to the weather? Target scramblers. I mean, scrambling can adjust. Scrambling in perfect conditions versus scrambling in the wind can be two different things. I know they'll affect tee shots more than anything, but it still gives you a moment of pause. Like if you need to land the ball on a certain spot on the green and there's a bit of wind in your face, sometimes you overcompensate and put it over the hole, or you leave it short and then all of a sudden you have a 40-foot putt. So I do think that around the green is going to matter. I would still rather focus on the ball strikers and those who do gain strokes off the tee, whether that be through distance or whether it's through accuracy. I think that's the way that you want to play it this week. But I think the cut line, when we look back historically, outside of the one really outlier year in 2015 where the cut line was +7, that you're going to see something around +1, +2, +3, +4, depending on how severe the wind is.
Yeah, exactly. And again, when we talk about wind, right, we're really talking about the gusts. These guys aren't going to hit the ball. If the wind's gusting 25, 30 miles per hour at a certain point, look, they're going to wait, right? They're going to wait to hit the ball. They're not going to, if there's sustained wind, then yes, true, you have to look at those wind conditions, but don't play so much into the wind where you have to, right, change your lineups like that. In terms of the cut line, we've usually seen it around that +1 or +2 mark. So in terms of that, I would play it, in that sense when talking about the correlation with the wind, but don't focus on that. Like you were saying, focus on the ball strikers, the guys who get it off the tee and approach really well. Those are the guys that I'm looking in, not so much the cut line.
Another one from Dane, he says, do you avoid volatile golfers like Grayson, because he has so many crooked numbers? I actually don't think so, because with 156 players in the field, this is the largest tournament we'll see all year. It's still top 70 and ties make the cut, but so many people miss the cut, and with the cut line being so strange and wind playing into it, well, Grayson has the potential to blow up. He's actually one of the few people in the field who can go really low as well. It's not to say that you can't make birdies on this course. There are 2 drivable par 4s, so you do want those guys with the extra distance. So as it pertains to Grayson Murray, he's just outside the top 10 in birdie or better percentage against this field over the last 24 rounds. I mean, his putting's awful, and his around the green game's not bad. His short game is really blown up by the fact that he's such a terrible putter, but we know his distance is going to be there. He can score on some of these par 5s, or at least make them a little bit easier. That I think I would want the birdie makers in general on my teams, because I don't necessarily think that a 5 of 6 team or a 4 of 6 team can win one of these giant GPPs, but a 5 of 6 team can definitely win a single entry this week, but you need to have the guys stacked at the top of the leaderboard, and Grayson doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to make the cut and come like T62. I feel like he's going to be inside the top 15, or he's going to be dead last and miss the cut, so I would prefer to take the more volatile players based on the conditions, based on the large field, knowing that a 5 of 6 or a 4 of 6 could potentially cash for me.
Yeah, and Grayson, I mean, he's a guy that does that gains birdie or better, right? He's, I think, just outside the top 10 over the last 24, and so you can see when he gets the ball striking, and he does really well with his long irons as well. So he's a guy that I would be in on in terms of that price range. So yeah, I wouldn't mind taking Grayson, but like you said, I'd rather take guys that have a little bit more variance, because if you hit, right, that's what you want, right? That's what you want, and you don't need the 6 of 6 like you did at the Masters. Right? You can get away with the 5 of 6. So I'm taking a little bit more risk. And that's not to say Grayson isn't a risk. Like you said, he could come in dead last. So I wouldn't mind taking Grayson, but I'm going a little bit elsewhere.
Next question from Kyle comes in about Chris Kirk. Why no talk about Chris Kirk? 13th in 2016, 8th in 2015. Great pivot play off the highly owned Kevin Streelman. These are very good points. The one thing that I don't like about Chris Kirk this week is that off the tee game. I know he's had past success here, and it seems like his game has been trending down recently. Probably a good first round leader bet, because he just dominates in the first round. Great DraftKings first day showdown play too. But with Chris Kirk, it's just he got so hot at the beginning of the year. I prefer him on shorter tracks where he can really do damage with some of those shorter irons. And even just going back to, like at the Shell, which was a driver course, he missed the cut. At API, he did quite well and finished 13th. But 55th the Heritage, 49th the Valspar. He's someone that if you play him all the time, continue to play him. There's nothing really directing you away with that, but I didn't like that at the Heritage last week. Lost over 2 strokes with his approach shots. And it's a tournament where the shorter hitting types like Chris Kirk can actually gain strokes with his off the tee, and he did that. Now you put driver in his hand, I'm not sure that's going to be the case so much. So I'm off of Chris Kirk. Are you using any?
No, you hit the nail on the head there. Driving distance, right? It's not the name of the game here, but you got to be able to get the ball out there. And he doesn't stat out well. Like you were saying, if he's losing approach, strokes gain approach, then where is he going to make it up? He's got to be putting really well. He's got to be really sharp with his around the green. And if that's someone that you want to focus on, then yeah, like I said, there are stats you can say in terms of course history. And this is always a debate, right? Course history over current form. I'm going to, like you said, I'm not going to play Chris Kirk. I'm going to fade him because of some of the stats that I really think that you need here. And if he's losing strokes approach, right, and he does not getting the ball out there quite as good as some of the other guys in that price range, I'm not going to be on Kirk either.
The next question comes from Joseph, who asks, who has the best chance at the $7,000 to $7,400 level? Now, if you use my cheat sheet up on DKPlaybook.com, you can find some of these names that are listed in there. And I went a bomber-heavy approach to this range. And I actually listed more names than usual because I am going to spread it out and not massively go overweight on one guy. When we deal with variance, part of embracing the variance is not pushing all in on one person, knowing that you can just be knocked out by the wind or something weird just like that, especially when we're talking about some of these cheaper players who are up and down and have giant swings. So I mentioned Grayson Murray already. The other guys, Keith Mitchell at 7,400, Harkins at 73, Grayson Trey Mullenix at 72, and Kevin Tway at $7,000 will be the main guys that I'll be using from down in that range. Just below, I mentioned Nate Lashley, and I'll have a sprinkle of the champ, Cameron Champ, Texas boy, $6,600 if I do want to press, like if I want to do like a list even like a Moore-less team, a Liss Scott team, and just still have another guy in that higher $8,000 area, you might have to drop down to that level, but I don't want to do that too much.
Yeah, for me, actually, it's going to be Scott Piercy. That's 74. I'm actually taking a closer look at CT Pan. I think you see, again, he doesn't stat out nicely, and I'm going to contradict myself here. He doesn't stat out nicely in terms of driving distance, but ball striking over the last 4 at RBC, he's top 25. He came, I think, top 25 as well at RBC, where you don't necessarily need driving distance. But I like where his form's coming through. I like, in terms of that price, if I want to fade in some of those guys like a Trey Mullinex, where, again, fading him, or you're fading 5%, I'm going to take a hit on CT Pan. I like where his price is coming in. I like his greens and regulation gain as well, and his par 5 scoring. He's top 20, so I do like that in that price range. And for me, at below the 7K, I'm actually looking at another Texas guy, Bronson Burgoon, someone that's grown up, that went to school in Texas. Again, I'm taking him as a flyer. His projected ownership might be 1 or 2%. So for me, if I allocate 2 or 3%, even 5% of my lineups for Bronson Burgoon, I'm going to be heavily overweight. So I'm going to take a flyer on him as well.
Burgoon's actually getting some chatter around the industry this week. Yeah. I was kind of surprised on it. Fantasy National right now has him projected around 4%. Because I think a lot of people have come in with the anti-Bronson Burgoon. It's like, he sucks, don't use him. So there's that counter argument to it as well. Mike asks, is Sergio the best wind player in the field with the weather conditions? Does this justify taking Sergio? I guess you could say that. I mean, you could say Scott Piercy is an excellent wind player, but it depends on the type of wind. Like, the sample is so small in terms of dealing with the wind. And like, is a coastal wind the same as Texas wind? I mean, I don't know. Probably not, if I had to put it into context. So it's really hard to really derive that. And like, sometimes you'll say, hey, you can't take Jason Day in the wind because his ball flight is too high. Well, Jason Day is actually one of the better wind players. So what does that tell you? It's hard to say that this guy is good in the wind. Maybe on that day he's good in the wind. Maybe on another day he's not so good in the wind. So I wouldn't factor wind experience into it too much. At least that's my take on it. Next question. Tom asked, 20 lineups. How many do you think I make with Sergio if I want to be overweight in the $8 GPP? If you make 5 Sergio lineups in the $8, you'll be potentially double the field. If not, you'll be like 35 to 40% more than the rest of the field.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're probably going to allocate, again, at that price at the top. I could see him coming in at 15% at the lowest in terms of where he's coming in. But yeah, if you make 5 of your 20 lineups with Sergio, I think you'll be pretty good there.
A. Wright mentions my main man, C. Woo! Kim, who did me a big solid by losing that playoff on the weekend. He asked, do you think he will be low owned again? I actually kind of do. I actually put Siwoo into my cheat sheet solely because I think that people will, A, not trust. It's a big price increase for Siwoo. Coming off a good week, and Siwoo rarely has 2 good weeks in a row. So, and a lot of people are disenfranchised because they were winning a lot of money. He goes to a playoff, he loses, then they're not winning a lot of money anymore. So I think there's a recency bias baked in, despite the fact that he came second at a tournament. It wasn't a fun second. It's a second where you saw him collapse to finish second because he had that tournament in his back pocket. And he falls around guys that are just going to be owned more than he will. Hadley's going to be way more owned. Perez, Scheifele, Steele, Jimmy Walker probably will be. Zach Johnson, even when you get to like the Jamie Lovemarks in the world. So I think that he and Ollie have the potential to slip through the cracks a little bit. I don't really ever like Ollie, but I will be putting probably Siwoo in around 15 to 20% of my lineups, because if I talk about Grayson Murray being a very high variance player, and those are the types of guys that I want to target in a high variance tournament, I think Siwoo fits that bill very well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there's no reason outside of the last 3 or 4 holes why we would be off of Siwoo. I mean, he had that. I mean, he was gaining a massive amount of strokes in every facet, and he was putting well. So you can look at a guy like Siwoo, outside of, like I said, the last 30 minutes of us listening on PGA radio, he really was dominating that tournament. And so his ownership now shouldn't reflect that. His price obviously does. But yeah, at that range, of course, like you said, Schauffele and some of these other guys are going to be so heavily owned. Yeah, Siwoo is a nice pivot because he's not playing bad at all. He really was elite last week at RBC. So I'm in the same camp as you. I wouldn't be off on Siwoo just yet.
Kyle asks if Kokrak is a good pivot off of Scott Piercy. Now, I think they're going to be owned around the same. I think they're both going to crack double digits. I think objectively Kokrak is a better play than Scott Piercy based on his length, ball striking, and everything that goes around that. But I don't think that one is necessarily a pivot off the other if they're going to be projected around the same ownership. If you're looking for pivots in that range, I like Sharma the best. Like, I'm just going to go with, listen, I didn't have any sort of real insight into Kadira and why he was good. He was just highly ranked in the world rankings, way more than everyone else. If you look at Sharma next to all these dudes, he's way higher ranked. So I think that he does have this, he doesn't have necessarily the length that you'd really like, but he's very good with his irons, and he is one of the highest skilled players, and I have him projected around 6%. That's less than half of what I have for Piercy and Kokrak. So I think that he could be the pivot. And if I was just swinging for the fences and I wanted to get off some of the names that I mentioned, Grayson, Harkins, or even Mitchell, who all project to be fairly highly owned, potentially double digits, I don't love it, and the course history would not lead you to it, nor would the recent form, but like Johnny Vegas is specifically the type of player that we're looking for here.
Yeah, exactly. It's sneaky long off the tee. Sharma, like you said, when you get into these weaker events too, you want to play another angle of, are they good in terms of their overall ranking? Same thing. I want to beat a dead horse here, but same thing with Kadira. He was top 50 when you look at overall golf ranking, and he was priced at the close to the minimum, if not the minimum price. So Sharma is right around that. And our recency bias tells us that we haven't seen Sharma, right? He was darling at WGC Mexico and some of these other places after that. But of course, Sharma at that price range, if you want to go off of Piercy, if you think that he's going to be heavily owned, I would definitely take a look at Sharma because, like you said, if you get him at 10% ownership, you're going to be in a good spot.
Kevin McKay asks, is Harold Varner III HV3? He used to be dynamite, not so much anymore. Does he have a pulse at 6,600? No, I don't think so. If you want to take him because he drives it a ton, go nuts. He's just not good right now. Riding Ghost asks, Martin Pillar? Question mark? Now, I don't want to say I'd rather have his wife more than him here, but I'm going to have 0% of both, so that's the way that I'm going to go. I know Wiley was talking up Pillar a little bit. I think it's because he was on Golflandia, and now Wiley has a connection with him. And he does have a pretty decent Texas track record. He was 4th at this event in 2016. He made the cut at the Shell. And when he spikes, he tends to spike. Like, looking back at his past results, at the OHL, he was 4th. At Career Builder, he was 3rd. And at Shell, he was 24th. Other than that, it's a bunch of missed cuts and finishes in the 60s. So I'm not personally feeling it, but if you think that he has a local connection, he can play in this Texas wind, by all means, go with Martin Pillar, just not for me. Will you be using any?
No, I mean, if I'm going to go down that price range, I want to go to some other guys. And if I'm going to play the Texas narrative, I want some of these guys to be playing well to show some form. And sure, he's shown some form here, but I'm not going to be playing Martin Pillar.
Next one. Matt Jones keeps popping up in my model. Are you owning any shares of Matt Jones this week? He does fit the Australia narrative that comes around this. Played well at this course in the past. I guess this is the kind of field where you could use him because it's pretty weak competition, but I really have no interest in old man Matt Jones. If you wanted to build a team of like Kuchar, Furyk, Matt Jones, Bill Haas, Zach Johnson, and just have like the all-time most boring team, it wouldn't be the end of the world, I suppose, but no Matt Jones for me. Yes or no for you?
No, it's like the San Antonio Spurs, right? It's like you guys just watching water boil. No Matt Jones for me. I get the Australian narrative, but no thank you.
Ryan asks, I think Walker's getting over Lyme disease. Agree or no? I'm not his doctor. I don't know. Nobody is talking Xander, and I love the guy this week. Can Xander win? Everyone is talking Xander. Come on now. He's projected to be like the 3rd highest owned guy. Yeah, I do love him here. Everyone loves him here. Xander's a fine play. The one thing I will caution, and this really cropped up last week at RBC Heritage, Xander sucks around the greens. Good putter. Can't chip, man. Like, he leaves himself some brutal par putts. And if the wind does pick up and he does start missing greens in regulation, then he could be potentially in a lot of trouble. Now, hopefully the ball striking comes through. He's one of the longest, straightest hitters on tour, which really plays to the advantage of this course. And when he gets dialed in, he's dialed in with irons, and he's a good putter, especially on Bermuda. It's just, if the short game really does play a big factor, it's going to be problematic for Xander. Now, I've already bet him to win this tournament. He's one of my core players this week, so I like Xander. I just wanted to throw some shade the other way just in case. Will you be using Xander as well?
Yeah, he was, again, my pick to win, so I obviously will be overweight in Xander. And if you listen to the broadcast, I believe it was on Saturday when they were, obviously when we were able to see it live, they were mentioning that he's gotten really mechanical. And again, you take this with a grain of salt, right? Like, these guys are also doing their research and they're talking to these guys and they're seeing them on the range. But one of the things that they were saying is he gets really mechanical, and he has since he's won, in terms of fiddling with the swing. Now, it's not going to take me off on Xander, but where that does play a factor, right, is around the green and short game where it's all about feel. So, and we saw that with his stats, and just around the green was atrocious last week. So a guy like Xander, he needs to be hitting those greens in reg. He needs to be putting well. And I think he's in great form. But like you were saying, around the green, stop getting tense, Xander. Just let just let it feel. But I'll be on Xander.
Any chance we can get an Ender Curse column on Fantasy National? Playing the guy after the stink wears off is extremely profitable. Depends on the guy. It took Chesson Hadley a few weeks to get over the Ender Curse, but now he's back in full form. Well, Ryan Moore is incredibly Ender Curse this week, in case people didn't know. And who was it? Well, Luke Donald's not even in this field, I don't think. Your main man, Luke Donald. I wouldn't be using Luke Donald here. But hey, maybe the place to play Luke Donald will be at Colonial when he plays again, coming off the Ender Curse. And everyone will he'll be 0% owned again because he couldn't come through with the Heritage. But that's why he missed the cut at the Heritage. The biggest course horse of the season misses the cut because he's Ender Curse. He did make a nice run at it, though. Kevin asked, long shot, how about the Gooch? I always like the Gooch. I like Gooch more for first-round leader play or in DraftKings Showdown play, but not for anything that I'm looking to get 6 of 6 through. Are you using any Gooch?
I might use a little shares of Gooch. I think he stats out well in some of the areas that we're looking at. But, I mean, again, you're probably projecting at a 1 to maybe 3% ownership. A little bit higher, right, 5%. But for me, I'm probably going to match that. I'm not going to be overweight on Gooch, but like you were saying, if you want to take some of those showdowns, absolutely. That's a definite flyer outside of the guys like Burgoon that I like down there. So I'll have some shares of the Gooch.
Kevin McKay, how much Zach Johnson is too much Zach Johnson? It almost answers the lifetime question of if you have to ask how much ZJ is, can't afford it, big man. Listen, Zach Johnson's played. When he won at the other course before they moved to TPC San Antonio Oaks. So that's something to note. But listen, the guy's good. I don't like where his recent form is coming in, but at his price, he doesn't really need to pay that off. He's one of the safer players in the field. I'm going full fade on Zach Johnson. I'll have 0%, only because I like the skill sets of the players around him a little bit more. I'll have a little bit of Jimmy Walker. I'll have a lot of Perez. Like I mentioned, around 15-20% of C. Woo! I'll have a bunch of Xander. So it doesn't fit with me. I have to start crossing people off. But if you wanted to cross off, let's say you just didn't want to play Xander because he's going to be too highly owned and you don't like the way that he sets up here. You can save yourself money and box out a lot of the field. If Zach beats Xander, then you're looking great in that situation. So I'm not here to talk you off Zach Johnson. I'm just personally saying I'm not playing any. Are you?
No, I mean, I'm either going up a little bit and I'm playing Ryan Palmer, or obviously going down right below him, Keegan Bradley. It's just you see the stats stat out nicely. And of course, right, he's won here and he's shown course form here. But I'm like you, I'm going to full fade Zach Johnson because there's some other guys that I like in that price range, and he just doesn't really fit in what I'm looking at this year for key statistics. If you look at a guy like Ryan Palmer, again, he's a little bit more expensive, but when you look at his splits, when you talk about, par 72s, long courses, difficult fairways to hit, strokes gained, ball striking, he's amazing. So in terms of where I want to play, I'm going to be out on Zach Johnson. I'm going a little bit higher and then also a little bit lower at 79 with Keegan.
Juan asked about Bill Haas. Is he a good cash play this week coming in his price? The price is right. I don't necessarily love the skill set. However, he's been playing fairly consistently ever since he's come back from the car crash that took him out of the Genesis Open. And he has the best short game of almost anyone on tour. And that can really go a long way if the cut line is going to be like +2 or +3. Saving them pars could really go a long way to helping Bill Haas. I don't really love the skill set from an upside perspective, but I do think that it's a very reasonable price. And I think that you could use him in cash if you wanted to.
Yeah, his tee to green game is not bad. I mean, again, you have to take that with a grain of salt. If you're using Fantasy National over the last 24, he did miss some tournaments because of what happened to him earlier this year. But he's not a bad player. I mean, he's gaining strokes tee to green, so that's what you like. It's just his approach, right? His putting has been atrocious outside of RBC Heritage, where he gained almost 7 strokes putting. It's been pretty bad. So I'm going to be out on Haas, but we've seen him. We've seen him play well before. So playing him is not a bad strategy, but I'm not going to be on him.
Jared and Chris ask similar questions about two different players. Chris asks, is Aaron Wise a sneaky DK play? And Jared asks, is Hostler going to fly under the radar at $8,100? The DFS community loves Aaron Wise, so he is never a sneaky play. I have both projected to be right around double digits, so anywhere between 8.5% and 12.5%. So I don't think that they're off the radar for anyone, and I would actually much prefer to play Wise than Bo Hostler. I know Hostler's a Texas guy. At least I think he's a Texas guy. I think he played at Texas A&M. Either way.
Yeah, well, I think he played at Texas.
He's been riding a really hot putter for the past few tournaments, and that's been the spike in his performance. Now, he can keep that hot putter going, sure, but as longtime viewers or even short-term viewers of the show know that I am never one to put too much emphasis on a hot putter. I think that can flip so quickly.
Yeah, and his approach game, Hostler's approach game over the last has not been good. But we've seen him pop, right? Like you said, he's been gaining a massive amount of strokes putting. Now, those can switch, right? We always look at extreme elite ball strikers who have been putting well, Luke List, Paul Casey, Adam Scott, that if that variance changes to where they find something, right, they find the Brad Faxton touch where they can fix their putting within a week like Rory, then that's the guys that we like because putting can change. But a guy like Hostler and Wise, these guys aren't necessarily going under the radar. It's just when I look at the key stats, Aaron Wise, like you were saying, now this is a course where we can use his driver. We can use his off the tee game, which is good. And he's been having a really good season so far. So I would be more on Wise, but I don't think these guys are under the radar plays. I think they're going to be a decently owned.
At DKGPP on Twitter asks about Siwoo. Is it possible he WDs mid-round? That always seems to be a possibility. Like I said, I'm going to use some Siwoo here. I'm going to ride the form a little bit. And everyone, listen, these are the questions that people always have with Siwoo. This is why you get really low ownership on Siwoo. It's why you get this week is a bit different because of the recency bias baked in of him coming second. The odds don't reflect that. But listen, if Siwoo misses 2 cuts in a row, he drops from 40-1 to 200-1 all of a sudden. People just really don't like the guy. So I do think that he comes in under-owned, and I will be using him. I'm just scanning Twitter now to see if I missed anything. Byung-Hun An, Tour Pro, who should be playing here this week because I would have bet him and picked him, but he's not playing. So, you can get off Twitter and go play in this event if you want, Byun. One and done. List, Hoffman, or Sergio? I would play List, but I can't play List because I've already used List. Or Sergio Garcia. I'd probably go, listen, I don't think that many people are going to burn Sergio in a one and done, so taking the best player in the field substantially in a week where no one's going to use him is never really a bad strategy. What are you doing in one and done? Because I think I'm leaning toward, I think I'm going Brennan Steele. I picked him on the show, but when I put in my team, listen, I'm inside the top 100 now. I've had a few good weeks in a row, so I'm in contention for the big money in the one and done, especially for the segment prize. So I need to hit a winner this week. So I got to find someone who's low owned, maybe Pat Perez, Brendan Steele, Scheifele. Yeah. I'd use Adam Scott, but I already used him too because I'm a loser. But who are you taking?
Out of those three, I would go Sergio because you look at a weak field, and if you want to play the player consultant, or he might know the tricks of this course, you can play that route as well. But a guy like Charlie Hoffman, you're saving a guy like Charlie Hoffman sometimes for majors where he pops. No,
that's not true. You are never saving Charlie Hoffman for a major. That's never happened.
Well, in the Masters,
I'll take Charlie Hoffman when I could have Bubba Watson or Jordan Spieth. Why would you ever do that?
No, yeah. So I'm saying that I wouldn't take. I would rather take Sergio. But for me, if I'm playing the one and done, I'm taking Xander. That's my pick. But out of those three, I would take Sergio.
Okay. Next one. If you're building 20 lineups, how big should your player pool be for moderate/high risk? If you're looking for moderate risk, the smaller the player pool, the better. So if your core hits, you win not only one, but a bunch of lineups end up cashing really highly. But that also where the risk comes in because, like last week, I think I had if Adam Hadwin, and I don't want to complain because I did well last week, but if Adam Hadwin had not withdrawn, I would have had 85% 6 of 6 teams through. Instead, I went off, I took my Adam Hadwin shares and put them onto Kevin Na and Jason Duffner and all these bums who missed the cut. So once you get yourself into a situation where you have 30% Kevin Na and he misses the cut, and in the situation that you're talking about to be extra risky where you have 50% of these players, one bad round from one of these guys sinks all your lineups during the course of a week. But if you're going to play 20 teams and you had a player pool of 15 guys, I would say that's fairly high risk.
Yeah, I mean, again, the Kevin Na, the one bad hole, right, for Kevin Na could ruin your lineups. And so, yeah, I agree with you there, because if it's a smaller pool, right, you want those core guys. It's something that we repeat every show, is that if you have your core players and they hit, great. If they don't, right, that's the type of risk that you want. But if you want to play a little bit safer, right, there's guys in that, right, in that high 8K range that I like, that I think are going to be safe plays. But yeah, smaller price pool, yeah, you can be a little more risky.
The way that I would consider doing it is that if you really do want to go all in and play like max leverage in terms of ownership, concentrate your core more by being really picky and choosy at the very top. And then concentrate most of your lineups around your top end guys who just have a higher % chance of coming inside the top 20 and making the cut, as opposed to some of the guys in the lower $7,000 level. So I always like to concentrate and just cross guys off, like no Sergio, no Hoffman, no Matt Kuchar, no Ryan Moore, that kind of thing, and then pick 3 guys, build around them, and then sprinkle in the other guys down at the bottom who are more volatile. Next question. What are the ownerships on Streelman and Lovemark looking like? Right now, it looks like they're going to be the 2 highest owned players of the $7,000 contingent. Lovemark projecting to be around 17 to 20%. Streelman somewhere between 13 and 17%. So those would be the 2 guys. And if you did want to pivot off of them, like Jim Furyk's coming in at less than 2%. I don't love that. Chris Paisley, I thought would actually have higher ownership. He's only projected to be around 3%. I don't like him, but like I mentioned, Sharma's there, Surrey's there. Those are 2 guys that I like a lot. And if you did want to pay up a little bit, I do like JB Holmes and Keegan Bradley.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're picking between the 2 in Streelman and Lovemark, I would personally go with Streelman a little bit more. He stats out better off the tee, par 4.
I would say that I would go with Jamie Lovemark, only because there's no chance that he doesn't hit it past the ladies' tees.
That's true. Neither is Zach Johnson, right? I mean, so you can, right? You can find these guys. Bowditch is another guy who doesn't strike it off the tee as well as Jamie Lovemark. And Lovemark, we haven't really seen since PGA National and pop. And so I like Streelman's current form a little bit better, and his par 4 scoring a little bit better and off the tee. So I'm going to take Streelman in that range. But like you were saying, going up to Keegan is not a bad strategy either.
Was Austin Cook's hot start to the season legit GPP play? I always like Austin Cook a little bit better at shorter courses, to be perfectly honest with you, so he won't be in my player pool. How high or low are you on Keegan Bradley? I'd say I'm higher than most on him, but he's not going to be like an essential core play. I'll probably have him around 15%, so 3 of 20 lineups, maybe 4, depending on how I construct them. But I never go less than 10% on anyone, so if I'm playing 20 lineups, they'll be in at least 2 if I'm going to use them. I see no point of having them in just 1, because then I feel like an idiot if that ends up hitting, and I just like, oh, I could have had 1 6 of 16 with this guy, and I don't. So it'll either be 2, 3, or 4 lineups for me on Keegan Bradley. But if the win comes and the ball striking is there, then I think that he can persevere through that. Footastic asks, I like Chesson Hadley this week. 4th in the 2015 Crazy Win Series. He also likes Keegan Bradley. The one thing I'll caution about looking at those 2015 stats too much is that if you came 4th in that tournament, that means you played on the end of the draw that didn't get the wind. If you were in the wind draw, you shot like 85 that day. So he has won at a windy Puerto Rico course before, but almost like some of the players that we're talking about, and Reed and I keep coming back to the same sorts of things, one of the main reasons that I like Lovemark over Streelman is that he can bomb it off the tee. Streelman can't. And with Chesson Hadley, he doesn't hit it very far off the tee. And his around the green game sucks. So that's a problem. So I'm not going to have any Chesson Hadley, and he is one of the guys in that $8,000 range that's projected to be very, very popular that I'm just getting away from completely.
Yeah, same here. Again, I'm going back to Keegan, especially on longer courses. Chesson, like you were saying, he does stat out well in some areas, but like if he goes wayward with his irons or off the tee, the short game scares me a lot. If his putting's not on, it scares me a lot. So I'm not going to be on Chesson. I'd rather go Keegan there.
Okay, spoiler alert, because I mean only members of FantasyNational.com should have access to this information, but there's a nice tease. Kyle asks, Fantasy National has Snedeker winning the 2nd most times in the simulator. Am I missing something? He's not popping in my model and has 1 top 20 on the year. Well, one of the things with Snedeker is where he missed so much of last season and then he had to play his way back in from injury. The simulator actually, it does weight recent form more than long-term form. It goes back ages and gives a different weighting to each thing. So if you just go back like 2 years, Brandt Snedeker, Adam Scott, Zach Johnson, Jim Furyk, I haven't looked at the simulator in a bit, but and Sergio would probably be the highest probability guys, along with Charlie Hoffman, in terms of how they play this length of holes. So when you go back and look at long-term adjusted scoring, Brandt Snedeker is one of the best players in this field. And listen, if you do factor in the wind, which that doesn't, I mean, no one had a better track record in the wind than one Mr. Brandt Snedeker when he went out and won Farmers Insurance by posting on a Sunday, and the tournament didn't end till Monday. So he's had a lot of success and a very good around the green player. I hadn't given much thought to Brandt Snedeker, to be perfectly honest with you, and he's been making a lot of cuts and fading on Sundays. We saw him fade last week at the Heritage. We saw him fade Sunday at Valspar when he was paired up with Tiger. So maybe eventually it's going to click for him. I don't want to pay the $9,000 for him this week.
Yeah, same here. I mean, his proximity from 150 up, right, 150 to 175, and those ranges, he's not playing very well.
But I don't. Yeah, but for some context, I don't think that Brandt Snedeker is going to be hitting very many approaches from 150 to 175. He's more in that 175 and beyond range because he's not a long hitter.
Right, where it gets even worse, right? And so that's where you would hope, right, with Brandt Snedeker, irons and putting, that's where he really makes his money. And so I'm not going to be on Brandt Snedeker either, because look at his price, right? His price is up there, and I'd rather go elsewhere. When you're looking at Brandt at 9,000, that's a lot to pay for someone that current form is not proving to us just yet that he's there, that warrants that price. Even if it's a weak field, right? And like you were saying, taking all the stats in Fantasy National with a grain of salt, I won't be on Brandt Snedeker at that price.
Next one, T-Dace 25 again in the chat. Thanks for asking more questions, my man. How do you feel about Old Man Sink this week? Probably a decent chance to make the cut, but just looking back at his recent results, 42nd, 58th, 31st, 46th, miscut, 20th, 32nd. Like, there's no high-end finishes, and he's losing a ton of strokes off the tee. He's gaining a ton through approaches, but if he's not using his driver to the best of its abilities, he's going to be in for a tough week here.
Yeah, a guy like Stuart Sink, I would think he'd be on the Champions Tour. That's no knock on Sink. I just feel like he's one of those guys that would play really well on the Champions Tour. I'm not going to be on Sink. Like you were saying, if he's not getting strokes off the tee here, that's going to really put you in a bad spot. So I'm not going to be in Sink.
Tom says, congrats on the big win. Thank you very much, Tom. As a longtime listener, he's made a killing of picking the opposite of my advice. But I've been pretty hot this year. Should I change my game plan? I don't think so, because I'm due for a really bad week. So just everyone I say I don't really like that much, just play those guys, and they're going to be awesome. Ponderosa Sports, List, Horschel, Zanderstack, thoughts. There's no chance I'm using Billy Horschel this week. I don't care about his course history. Just like he's $2,000 overpriced. Like, yeah, you're getting low ownership, but you can have so many better players in that area than Billy Horschel.
Yeah, Horschel, his only reason why he's up there is because of his course history. He's not playing that way. We saw him pop a little bit at RBC, but no way. No way. I mean, that's no way.
Nobody has mentioned Summer Haze all week. Your thoughts? Let's keep it that way. Because if anyone mentions Daniel Summer Haze, they're going to be like, man, I should play Daniel Summer Haze. Don't play Daniel Summer Haze. Course history aside, he's been brutal for like a year.
Yeah, no way. Not on Summer Haze.
Oh, geez, now the chat skipped on me. There's a lot of questions here. CT is a lock at RSM and RBC. I will say that he has played well at a really long track at Torrey Pines over the years. The one thing, if you go back and look at like the performance and like recent form, no matter when it's from with CT Pan, he never has two good tournaments in a row. It just doesn't happen.
I know. I mean, I want to take a flyer on CT. You know, I liked where he came in at RBC in terms of his iron play. And his ball striking is popping. So I'm going to take a flyer on CT, especially at that 7,200. You know, if he gets the top 20, then he's paying dividends for me. So I like CT.
Any merit in playing a Texas stack? Hoffman, Palmer, Walker, Laird. Laird is from Scotland, but I'll give you that one. He has won at this course before. Anyone else you would include in a great Texas course history stack? Kuchar always plays well. Adam Scott has won every event in the Texas swing in the course of his career, so you could throw him into it. Aaron Badley is a good Texas player. I don't hate that idea. Martin Pillar is another one who came up earlier. He's played well in Texas over the years. I'm sure there's guys I'm missing, but those ones just spring to mind immediately. Can you think of anyone else?
Yeah, Johnny Vegas, right? He lives in Houston.
Yeah, but he never plays well in Texas.
No, he does it. I mean, yeah, you could play the whole Texas narrative. Badly, Burgoon, again, you can play that narrative. It'd be interesting to see how that pans out. And last year, right, we looked at this Texas swing, and Australian golfers did really well here. So, play that angle as well.
Would starting a GPP team with List and Scott make sense this week? I mean, I hope so because I'm doing it a lot. Those are two of my favorite plays. So, Evan, I'm on board with you. If I win, we'll win together. How about that? Next one, Jordan. Does Asswagon grade out well here? Does Asswagon grade out well anywhere? Like par 70 where he can like maybe get the par 3 scoring going. Like I have no time for Asswagon. Even when he makes the cut, he comes like T60.
Yeah, no way. No time for him.
JS, not massive off the tee, but is Hostler going to be overlooked? It's in Texas, and he could be really good. I mentioned him a little bit earlier, but to recap, I don't like him. He's been riding a hot putter, and that's basically been the entire skill that he's been going with. So, and he's not being overlooked. He'll have around double-digit ownership, so I think he's a fade for me. Worth more to you, current form on any course or form on similar style courses? Current form generally trumps everything for me, but I do like to see certain players that play well on similar style of courses. I'm not big on like just course history. Even last week, one of the reasons that I ended up on like Si Woo and Bill Haas was not just the Pete Dye correlation that would go on at all Pete Dye courses, but adding RSM, adding Colonial, adding Sony into that mix, just where I've seen a lot of crossover among similar names on the leaderboard and trying to find sneaky guys that way. So I do think that does work. It's just this course, I don't even know what to go with. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, there's some corollaries. I think Doral was a course that came up for me. I'm taking some from the Masters in terms of off the tee.
Hold on a second. The problem with Doral is it was a WGC that only the best players got to play at Doral, so it doesn't really, it doesn't really help you.
You got to take it with a grain of salt. I think, you know, Travelers, when you look at Torrey Pines, just because of the distance, right? And so there's no real course corollary for Valero. You want to use it as ancillary stats to say if there's another type of tiebreaker, for instance, right? Like we're putting in our statistics with 0% in Fantasy National. These are some of the tiebreakers. I would use those more so when looking at corollaries, because this course, again, with the wind variance, with distance and the par 72, there aren't a lot out there. So you got to take it with a grain of salt and sprinkle some information here and there.
King James, LeBron on the day off, asking some golf questions. I like it, LeBron. Anyone $6,900 and below, apart from Answer and Lashley. He also throws out the name Nick Taylor, and someone else threw in Andrew Putnam. Andrew Putnam reeks. I know he's been playing a little bit better, but he reeks. Nick Taylor, always good off the tee, but he's also been brutal lately. And like I said, I'm fading Answer due to ownership purposes. I get that the odds versus the pricing make him a better DraftKings play than a bet. I understand that. When you get Abraham Answer in a 156-man field, he's going to be 14% owned. That's a hard pass for me. You mentioned Burgoon. I'm off Burgoon after liking him initially. Nate Lashley, Cameron Champ, and there was someone else down here that I had the star next to their name so I could remember them. No, there's not even anyone. Like, I really hate this area. Let me run the model over the past 24 rounds and tell you who rates the best from down in that level from that area. It's probably Answered, to tell you the truth. Nate Lashley actually is the highest. He's 18th in the model from the $6,000 range. Garrigus at 71 is 24th. Von Taylor is 69th, and the Gooch is 27th. So those, I guess, would be the next two guys. Maybe I will use a share of the Gooch. And then I can just be fired
up. You got to go with the Gooch.
Well, listen, if he wins, I can write the Gooch in all caps, and that'd be very on brand for me. And if he misses, I'll just go kick him in the Gooch, and, you know, it's like quid pro quo. Next one, Ryan asks, I'm loving Lovemark this week. Scary as hell. Thoughts? I like Jamie Lovemark as well. I was really hoping that people would get off of him and he would drop in the betting market, but that does not seem... Actually, he's down to 55-1. Huh, maybe I'll make that my last play on the card. He opened at 40. And he's pairing with Brendan Steele next week for the Zurich Classic in terms of the team competition. So even if both of those guys play crappy this week, be on them next week. Jamie Lovemark loves that TPC Louisiana course. Cost me a lot of money there by losing a playoff a few years ago, but still, he's had a good track record at that course and his skills fit it really well. But I do like Jamie Lovemark a lot this week. Next one, check out Denny McCarthy also. I mean, that's not even a question for me. Went 75% list last week with a big ROI. Is 100% crazy with his high ownership projection. Certain weeks, if you want to push all in, I get it. I think that with the strength of the field being all up in the air, that theoretically you could talk yourself into having one of these high-priced guys being in 100%, but I think with elements like the wind, the 156-man field, where just a lower percentage of people make the cut, and the high variant nature, I think this is not a week you want to go 100% on anyone. Now, if you do go 100%, and that guy does well, you're going to be fantastic. It just, over the years with the high cut line, we've just seen so many big name players miss the cut that I would not recommend it this week. Do you think that you would go like, I'm not going over 50% on any player? And even if Luke List is going to be 30% and you have him at 50%, you're still massively overweight to the field.
Exactly. And you also have to take into account that what if the rug is pulled out from under List? I mean, he is playing amazing. And so all of the stats, and even passing the eye test, right? And he's putting, mediocre. So that's very great for List. And so he's playing extremely well. But if you go 100% and for whatever reason, right, the rug's pulled out of List, you're in a lot of trouble. So I wouldn't go 100%. I don't think like you said, I don't think you need to. There are some other guys that diversify. Again, Ryan Moore is someone that I like, Adam Scott as well. So I wouldn't go 100%. The most I'm going is around 40 to 50 with Xander, but that's about it.
Kyle asks, ownership projection on Kevin Tway, a popular sleeper this week, says he's getting much buzz for not being all that great. Statistically, he rates out very well at this course and has had a good finish here in the past. I will be using Kevin Tway. I have Fantasy National right now has him projected between 8 and 12%. So he will be one of the chalkier guys down in the $7,000 level. And if I'm using that sort of thing with Answer, at least with Tway, he rates out really well for me in terms of distance and ball striking. Any insight on Corey Connors? No, not really. I feel like he had his run now that he's good. Garrigus, is he an amazing play at $7,100? Well, the guy can't putt, so he's never really an amazing play. I bet you he'll be, one of these 2 days, he'll be really good in the showdown contest. Maybe he'll be a first-round leader guy, but he's a fine play at $7,100. It's just he always finds a way to collapse, always. Even when he gets running hot for like half a round, and then it's bogey, triple, double, triple, and it's like, oh, he missed the cut. He was just 8 under. Are you using Garrigus?
Yeah, I mean, Garrigus, yeah, like you said, he stats on nicely, but I don't know if we get amazing plays in this range at any point. I mean, outside of soft pricing like the Masters, a couple weeks ago or other majors, you're not going to get amazing plays. You can get amazing results, right, with some of these guys, but at 7,100, there is some variance, right, that he's not going to do well. That's why he's priced at this range. And so I wouldn't necessarily be so honed in on amazing plays as opposed to, can this guy return a top 15? And I think so, right? Like you were saying, if he starts off hot, he can make that return come very nicely to your lineups. But amazing play, that's a little bit of a stretch.
Tiger Woods asks, thanks for stopping by, Eldrick. Who's a good low-owned one-and-done pick? And I'm going to mix this into another question that's from Garrett that says, thoughts on the defending champion. So if you're looking for low-owned, just because someone's low-owned doesn't make them good. It doesn't make them a good play. So you still want to have quality. I mentioned Sergio as a good one-and-done play because I don't think that a lot of people are going to use him. People are not going to use Matt Kuchar here. And he's still a top 5 player in this field, and you'll probably get him at like, I'm speaking on behalf of like the Gups Corner, like giant one and done where there's like over 2,000 people in it, but he'll probably be like sub 2% owned in the one and done. And while he doesn't have the highest upside, he does have one of the highest top 20 projections of anyone in this field, top 10 projections. So that's always nice to get some cash that way. And then Kevin Chappell would be the other one. And my thoughts on Chappell is I'm using Chappell this week, not one and done, on my DraftKings team. And I'm worried that he's missed 2 cuts in a row. I'm worried that he's dealing with a back problem. But although he's played 3 weeks in a row now, I don't get why that would be such an issue. But I don't think that anyone's going to use him. Do you?
No, not at all. I think he's burned all of us the last couple of weeks because he's the play, and we told ourselves, he's playing, so the back can't be that bad. But he's obviously missed cuts, and so he's a nice play. I would also look at Pat Perez. Pat Perez for a one and done in this area. I don't think he's going to be that heavily owned, especially where you see him at that price. So Pat Perez is another guy that I'm looking at in terms of one and done, and especially as a DraftKings, I think he's a nice contrarian play from some of those guys in that 8K range. And
even to cover you on the Pat Perez front, Tom asked, did you cover Chesson Hadley's ownership? And I'll say that Chesson Hadley right now projects anywhere from 16 to 19%, and Pat Perez is around 15 to 17%. So you actually save ownership by getting a way better player at a cheaper price from going from Chesson Hadley down to Pat Perez. The betting bartender asked you, Reid, can we get some funny quotes or pictures behind you on the board? Unfortunately, Mr. Betting Bartender, Reid would have to be funny for that to happen. I can't just feed the guy quotes. Maybe in the future, if you use this room again?
Yeah, I'll be like a Woody Page in the chalkboard where there's some funny quips. I can give the fans what they want.
Mark asked, Russell Knox or Keith Mitchell? I will be going with Keith Mitchell in that spot.
Yeah, same here. Russell Knox. I mean, RBC was a Russell Knox, and that's where you would play him, and not here.
Mark asks, how about Yaga bombs in the 6.9K range? Ability to go low at least. Big off the tee as well. I hadn't really given him any consideration, to tell you the truth. I didn't even look into old Yager. I didn't even see he was in the field, to tell you the truth. Steven Yager.
I think that gives us the answer here, that at that range, we mentioned some other guys, but I'm not going to be on him there.
I don't even see him in the field.
Yeah.
Do you? Oh, there he is. Steven Yager, $6,800. Past 24, rates out 86th. Let's see. Driving distance is like the one thing that he does well. That's it. And he still loses strokes off the tee. So, no, hard pass on the Yaga bombs for me. How's he been doing recently? Miscut, 54th, 49th, miscut, 43rd, miscut, 54th. Yeah, he's great, though. Thanks. Maybe a first round or single day showdown contest if you do believe in his ability to go low. I don't.
Yep.
Followed your Siwoo pick last week. You like him again. I am. Zach Johnson, feast or flop? I'm praying it's flop. Looks more like feast, but that's one of those hard ownership things that I'm taking a stance on where I'm not playing him. How do you attack the new showdown games on DraftKings? Go with the leaders? I don't think that's actually proven to be that great of a strategy, and that's only addressing the Sunday showdown when the finishing points actually come into it. Like even at the Masters, like Patrick Reed wasn't on the winning roster. You still want your eagles. You still want your birdies. You still want your biggest movers. And if those are the guys, and even last week, if you had stacked everyone who was like 1 through 6, those guys didn't finish 1 through 6. And at a tournament where win can play such a factor like this, the leaderboard can go really wonky. So maybe trying to target guys, I think for the single day showdowns this week, is stacking a wave, and even a very concentrated part of that wave. Like, I don't know if we're going to get the 3 groups on the weekend like we did for the Heritage because of the wind conditions and the inclement weather that was coming in. They had to force the hand a little bit. So even if they play in pairs of 2s, I would almost isolate like a half-hour period or an hour period where 6 or 7 groups go off, just take all my guys from them and hope that that is the part. And I'm not saying just do it for the 10 a.m. to the 11 a.m. You could do that one. You could do 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and do it that way as well and make multiple lineups. But I think that's the way that you should be attacking, at least for this week. I played, in full disclosure, not a ton of the showdown game. I've been trying to play every week, but I don't have a good strategy for it yet. And that's the way that I'd be looking at it.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting strategy. Take it in the same way you would take second half bets, right? When you're looking at guys who need to score points, that's what you want, right? You want guys that are going out there and have to score points. Leaders obviously are play a little bit more conservative, unless you get a guy like Patrick Reed, who even as an aggressive player still didn't get all the birdies and didn't score as well as some of the other guys. So I would employ that strategy as well, where the same way you would take second half dogs, you want those points. That's the strategy that I would use with Showdown.
If you're just tuning in or been here for a bit and haven't given the episode a like, please go forth and do that right now. It takes half a second. Thank you. Also, subscribe to the podcast. Become a member of Fantasy National. Like I mentioned, 1.02 million at least from members in DraftKings winnings over the past 2 weeks. Not too shabby. Reed and I will be rapid firing through your questions here over the final 5 to 7 minutes or so. So if you have any more, we will get to them. And I'm going to scan Twitter right now to see if I've missed any there, because I haven't looked at it in like an hour. Because I'm lazy. Who is the good PM, AM core? Yeah, I'm not going to give you that. You have to go do that research on your own, pal. Sorry. Especially when you say that you're lazy. Yo, Pat, calling it now. I'm winning one of the tournaments I entered this week. Always got top guys, but one misses the cut. Not this week. I'm due. See my tweets on Sunday. It's not a question. What's wrong with you? After nearly a year of routinely passing over Paul Casey in favor of Ricky, Rory, Rose types for last week's RBC Heritage, I finally built my rosters with Casey. That's also not a question. I don't care. Oh, my God. Just trying to get to people's questions. You people are fucking it up. Eric, here's the question. Pat, what's more frustrating? High salary favorites missing the cut, or a pivot that misses the cut when the guy you pivoted from would net you the money? That's always frustrating. I think it's when one of your core plays does miss the cut. Because when I pivot, it's not like, hey, there's the high-owned guy, there's my one pivot. I like to pivot in 1 or 2 directions, maybe take 2 or 3 guys. So you hope to hit around 66% on those guys. So it'd be the high-end guy who misses that sinks me. The one decent thing about the high-end guy missing is they generally tend to be some of the highest-owned players in the tournament.
Exactly.
So if your pivot hits off one of the chalkier guys and your super chalk guy misses, you tend to be in a better circumstance, I find at least.
Yeah, same here. I mean, because you're also playing the field in that sense. I think right, the core guys, if they hit for obvious reasons, or if they miss for obvious reasons, your lineups are pretty screwed up. And so the pivots, that's exactly it, right? You're taking a pivot, you're taking a risk on some of these guys. And so there is some variance in that decision. If they don't hit, okay, fine. But if those core guys, like the top, right, let's say, for instance, a Charlie Hoffman, he misses, or a Xander misses, that's gonna hurt quite a bit. So those core guys, to me, that's like you said, that's the one that hurts the most.
King James back in the chat. Hello again, LeBron. Thoughts on Badley? Decent record here and making cuts. Former winner as well. He says, sorry for all the questions. Don't be sorry for all the questions. The more questions you have, the better. We'll get to all the questions. It's the stupid other comments that fill the shit up that piss me off. He has a very good around the green game. He is an excellent putter. If he found himself in the middle of the trees off the first tee and made a 48 on a hole, also wouldn't be super stunned. I think I will leave Badley more for those single-day showdown contests, first-round leader bets, than actually working him into my core. And I've been hearing some Badley buzz around as well. And the big thing is, if I didn't like the other guys, if I'm just going to use some loser from the $7,300 range who doesn't rate out well for me, the guy is going to be Johnny Vegas.
Yeah, same here. Or even Grayson. I mean, Grayson Murray.
Yeah, but I've already said I'm using Grayson Murray.
Yeah.
I already said I'm using Keith Mitchell. I'm using Harkins.
Yeah.
I'm using Wise. If you're just looking for one guy who's off the board from that range, it would be Vegas for me, not Aaron Badley.
Yeah, exactly.
Next one, Siwoo Kim placed second last week. Does that mean he has a chance to place in the top 10 this week? It means he has a chance to win this week. It's Siwoo we're talking about here, the Ricky Bobby of golf, first or last. I would say he has a better chance of finishing last. Well, not last. I'd say he has a infinitely better chance of missing the cut than coming inside the top 2 again, but I do think that he's going to be lower owned and does present great upside. Not a terrible win player either. Next one, since I have to pay taxes on all my DK money, do you have room I can crash at for a Canadian address? I'd like to give that out, but sir, you need to become a citizen if that's going to be the case. Eric says, do you enjoy playing, this is one of the most forgettable tournaments of the year. Do you enjoy playing DFS this week? I do. I always feel like whenever I look back and I go back and I track my results, when I look at tournaments like the WGCs or even Torrey Pines or the Match Play, which is WGC, the Masters, the US Open, the Players, I don't do well in those tournaments. These are the type of tournaments, like I did really well at Honda this year where there was high variance, and maybe I just embraced the variance and it worked out that way. Honestly, I won a lot last week at RBC Heritage, which is not a great one, although I tend to do well DK-wise at that tournament every year. But tournaments with higher variance, trickier courses, and with fields without the very top-end players, I just have a really tough time. When you give me 10 of the best players in the world, it's a crapshoot to which one you really need to have in. When you know you can fade some of the top-end guys, like last week, I don't say it was clear that you could fade the top end, but it didn't seem like they had as big of an advantage over the field at a Pete Dye course coming off a taxing week at the Masters that you could attack that other range. But my core at the Honda was better than my core last week at Heritage. It just stupid Sean O'Hare missed the cut, and I would have won the giant $4 that week. Finished inside the top 20 with a 5 of 6. So I was all over JT, all over Luke List, and those guys. So I do really like these tournaments where you have to go off the board a little bit, and the numbers can help back you up. You can spread out and diversify your portfolio with some of these $7,000 players a little bit more. So I actually really like these weeks as it pertains to DraftKings Golf. And if it wasn't for DraftKings Golf, no one would give a crap, let's say, about this tournament.
Exactly. I think Valspar, one that you mentioned, right, is these aren't necessarily, you got some other key players or top players that play Valspar, but you like these tournaments because if you do your research, you can find ways to fit in guys that potentially no one's talking about, or some really nice pivot plays right in that mid-7, that low 8K range. And so these tournaments are really, and that's what makes us watch these tournaments, right? If we have some stake in it, these tournaments become very interesting. RBC, why would anyone listen unless you're like us in the industry? Why would anyone listen to PGA radio, right? When talking about RBC, that's what makes this stuff interesting. So I enjoy these tournaments as well.
I loved how fired up those serious announcers were, knowing that people were listening. Just see, woo, 35 feet, woo! I liked it. I can get it. They should have that alternate feed for like the TV broadcast. I don't need Jim Nance calling me his friend. We're not friends, Jim. All right. You don't need to welcome me to the broadcast. I like the guys who'd be like half drunk, fired up on like the other feed. I'd be like, all right, let's do this. That's like me pacing around, Feinberg pounding some crown, Kenny Kim pounding the crown right along with him, just being all jazzed up for some golf.
Oh, I'd pay money for that.
All right, so Let's get to the rapid fire part here. Kevin asks, is clicking on Ollie just paying the rake this week? Normally I'd say yes, but he actually isn't a bad pivot play. I'm not using him. He's been a very good wind player, but no one is taking Ollie anymore.
Yeah, same here. Low ball flight. I like him in the wind.
Are you using him, though? Because I'm not.
No.
Okay.
I'm not going to use him.
Any Peter Uline love this week? Never any Peter Uline love, please. Joseph asks, who's Ander cursed? That would be Ryan Moore. Mark asks, cool to play Luke List in at least 15% of lineups from now until the day he retires. I mean, maybe, but if you're 15% Luke List this week, you're half of the field, so know that going into it. Mark also asks, would you go Big Bo Hosla or ZJ? I'm playing neither, but are you playing any?
Nope. Neither.
If you had to play one, which one would it be? It would be Zach Johnson.
Hostler.
I would play Zach Johnson.
I like Hostler's. I think he's a big hoss, so I like him.
Oh, geez. The chat reset on me. Here we go. Can you give me a reason to pick Keimer? Can't really find one, but $7,200 is attractive. I think that if you're going to use him, I'm not. But it would almost be to the same vein as the Kadira move of last week, or why I'm using Sharma this week. You just, hey, this guy is supremely talented versus everyone else around him. I worry that he was injured. That kind of strikes me as odd. And he's like one of the worst short game players ever. For a guy who's won 2 majors, the guy cannot chip. And when you see the courses that he won at, not big on around the green course. He won at Whistling Straits, where he was just striking irons. Not a big around the green course. It's real funky. And then he played Pinehurst, where he could putt from off every green, so it didn't make that big of a difference for him in terms of chipping. So I think that's a negative towards him. I think the wrist is a negative towards him. He did make the cut at the Masters, did make the cut last week, but no Keimer for me. Are you intrigued, though?
I'm intrigued because of, like you said, talent doesn't equal that price. I mean, his current form and where he's coming in at is pretty bad. We saw him pop a little bit at the Masters, so I'll have some ownership just because at that price, you're finding a pretty nice talent down there. So I'll have some ownership on Keimer.
Any Bowditch love this week? A former winner here, and he played one of the best rounds I've ever seen in 2014 on Sunday, where he was just striping everything. He's one of the few players who's ever lost strokes putting during a week and won the tournament. He was that good tee to green. Not so much this week. I love Bodo in general, so he has my support. If he wants to go out and win and I'm not on him, I'll feel bad because he's like 1,000 to 1 to win, but it would be awesome to have Bodo back full-time on tour. Non-Valero question. I got no time for non-Valero questions, pal. Sorry. JB Holmes, yay or nay, long off the tee, but does he do anything else? Yes, he does, actually. He's quite good around the green. I like JB Holmes this week.
Yeah, so do I. I'm not going to be playing him, but he'd be a good play. For me, there's other guys in that price range, but no JB for me.
Let's see. You all find an episode you talked about Kadira last week. Just curious, that troll on Twitter pissed me off. I basically did what you did with Sabatini first round leader bet. We talked about the Sabatini first round leader on this show last week, and then I forgot to do it.
I know.
So many people hit it too, and it was awesome. Listen, I love seeing everyone win. It sucks. Like I went and looked at it. I was like, oh yeah, I thought I had him for a while too, and I went and looked at it. I was like, oh crap.
I know. I thought the same thing.
Ryan, staying off List and Hoffman and hammering the 8,000 is pretty contrarian this week. I think so. I think that is a very viable move here. I'm staying off Hoffman completely, which could be to my detriment. My main man, David Jane, getting back in the touting game here coming up with a few weeks off from his real job. He'll be on the show over the course of the next few weeks. Shout out to Dave, too, because he's getting married. A lot of success coming his way, but I do need his insight because he's one of the best. He loves Charlie Hoffman this week. But I love Luke List, so I'll be taking Luke List. I'm trying to wrap this up. Making 40 lineups via Fantasy National, and I want to do 20 in the $3 and 20 in the $4, but can't seem to do this from FN. Is it possible to delete? You just have to unclick all your started players, and then you just remake your lineups again when you go through it. So that way you have 2 separate CVSs. That would be the way to go about it. Tway ownership around 10%. Do you enter your lineups by hand if you play more than 20 max contests? No, I don't. Listen, I don't play more than 20 lineups in any contest, so I always just use the Fantasy National generator, and then I tweak my lineups manually in there, and then I export the CVS and upload it. It saves me like 3 hours. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, same thing.
All right. All right. We got 2 more questions in here. If you have any more, we have like 2 minutes left to go do this. So, congrats on the win. Should we be showing Jimmy Walker some more love? Past champ, Texas, a little bit of form, quality player, nice odds too. I'm not going to bet Jimmy Walker, and I feel bad about that because I do like him, but I am going to be using him a lot on my DraftKings team, so maybe he can come through for me in that vein, but I am with you. I do like the form that he's been popping recently. Popping that form at exactly the right time. Jimmy Walker back at a course he likes. Final one, King James with another. Had Hoff and Chappell back-to-back winners on list this week, so it's time to get on. Thanks for the answers. Prep for the Pacers. Yeah, you do have a Pacers game. Hey, listen, you didn't prep enough for game one. Now you got to prep for game two. Probably getting this golf knowledge in. I really hope Luke List wins this week. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah, he's been so close. I mean, for me, obviously, I'd want Xander, but like you said, if List wins, yeah, that's going to be a long time coming because his talent is there. He needs to close the door. So I would be happy if List won.
This is starting to remind me of that season Kisner had 2 years ago, where he was just close every single week. He had like 3 playoff losses, a bunch of top 10s, and he never got that win until the RSM at the swing season. And Luke List has been the swing season master, despite no wins in there, but like seconds and thirds, and that's translated over into the regular season. So I'm hoping he pops one here, gets that out of the way, and maybe he can pull a Xander and go on to win again, because he definitely has the talent. If he just putts just a little bit, he's going to be in the money. But I'm starting to worry that he's going to continue to come like P2, T8, T13, and he'll win like the Fries.com Open in October when no one's paying attention.
Yeah, same. And you want to be on List, right? We've been talking about him so much. So if you're off on List, like I am, I'm going to be the idiot that's off on List. When he wins, we're talking about him every single week, and he stats out so nicely, and he's been playing great. So I'm taking that risk. But again, like I said, I'd be happy if you won, because he's an extreme player. I like him.
I missed one here. Jeff says, thoughts on Kokrak? We answered that a little bit earlier. He is for both of us. He's fine. All right, that'll do it. Reid Fowler, tell everyone again where they can find your work and where to follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter is Reid T. Fowler. YouTube channel, Reid T. Fowler. DK Live, again, course previews and all that good stuff is on DK Live in the playbook. So it's just Reid T. Fowler everywhere.
All right, for me, I'm Pat Mayo. You probably know that by now. Again, give the episode a like if you're still sticking around for this. And you can always catch us on demand on the podcast versions, which are on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Audio Boom, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. I heart you too, radio, but I would heart you more if you subscribed and left a review, preferably a positive one. It's how people find this stuff. This is why I continuously bring this up. The more people that subscribe to it and download it, it does really help keep it free. Always the video on DK Live. You're watching this on Periscope, but this will be always available on demand on YouTube in case you missed anything. And you can check out my cheat sheet up on DK Playbook, my course preview up on DK Playbook, my betting cheat sheet will be up on my Facebook page a little bit later on. I'll have my DK Playbook DraftKings cheat sheet updated with pivot plays and ownership in about an hour's time, so go check all of that out. Thank you all for watching. We really enjoy you coming every week. We can help you answer the questions. Hopefully it leads to someone having the Mondays this time around. Apparently it works out a lot better if you're a Fantasy National member. At least that's the corollary that I'm seeing. But hey, that's just me. Even if someone else wins, you send me your screenshot. We'll get it out there. You're going to get big praise from me on the show next week. Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.